So our collaborative care model at Journey Clinical consists of three really important pillars. It's us as the medical team, which includes our prescribing clinicians, you guys as the psychotherapists, and also our mutual friends and patients. And so our responsibility as the medical team is to ensure safety. And how that works is that we evaluate each of your clients really thoroughly and make sure that they're cleared from a medical and psychiatric standpoint so that they can engage in this really beautiful medicine with you guys. We also monitor patient outcomes throughout the entirety of their treatment with us, and we also provide education and also enforce protocols with patient safety in mind. And so basically our job as the medical team is to make sure that these patients are really safe so that you guys can do what you guys do best as psychotherapists, right? You're going to provide psychotherapy and any other support that your clients might need with a sense of ease and some peace of mind that you have a medical team to back you up. You have a medical team to reach out to should anything happen during the KAP session or even beyond that. And so if you have ever reached out to our medical team for support, you've likely interacted with myself or our lead clinician, Bridget. We also hold KAP Q&As twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, where you guys can jump in and ask any questions about a medical case or a clinical case, or even needing some clarity about protocols, or have any feedback about how we can partner with you guys better. Right? We also encourage our therapists to communicate any therapeutic goals that you create with your patients to our clinicians so that they can take that into account when they're creating that plan of care. And so I think that one of the really beautiful things about the collaborative care model is that you guys are as much a part of creating the plan of care as we are, and your patients are too, right? You're just as much a part of creating this experience as we are as the medical team.
Thank you, Kat. Thanks for giving that overview and sharing kind of the medical side. I wanted to pass it over to Denise actually and just ask you to touch on the side as a clinician, as a therapist. How do you interact with the medical team, and what has that experience been like for you?
So I'm always looking for ease and grace, right? I work with women of color, and so I'm looking for things that make it easy for them. And so being able to give the information about Journey Clinical, have them go in, set themselves up, make an appointment, it's just easy, right? It's just not it's not hard. They get their questions answered, they ask questions, and then they get their medicine, and then they're able to bring it in. And it allows us to still be the therapists we need to be without being burdened with a whole bunch of red tape or just lots of things. Like I haven't experienced that, right? They get you trained, they give you the information you need, and they make sure you have the support you need. You can reach out if ever I have a question. I send an email, I go back, there's an answer. I don't even think about it. I send the email, I know when I go back, there'll be an answer. I haven't really had to ask for much help. But they have been very helpful and responsive. And because I work in communities of color, I asked when I said, hey, I need some support because of my community. Can we put together a group? And they were like, yep, there it was. Right, so that's been very helpful to be able to ask and get support for your clinic, for your clients. So that's been important. Easy grace.
Easy grace.
Brian, do you have anything to add on yours from your perspective?
That's really been my experience too. It's just been a very attentive and available team, and just the idea of doing this kind of work and having not just one provider but a whole team of providers, a whole community of experts that I can find answers to questions. It just makes it feel like I'm able to actually educate people about it with a sense of Journey Clinical all behind me, not holding me up. So it's really helpful.
And while we have you, I'd love to hear about within your practice, what does your KAP offering look like? We support a variety of modalities, so there's in-person, remote, we do group KAP, we do remote retreats, and couples KAP even, so there's a lot of options. So what does it look like in your practice?
So in my practice, thus far it's been only one-on-one individual work in person. My personal comfort level is I like to do all the KAP sessions in person, and part of it is that there's this idea of set and set in, and it's interesting. I've done a lot of work with more indigenous medicines, and the idea of really looking at all the elements that affect the internal state is really, really important. And just because ketamine is it's a anesthetic, right? So we might not think in those terms necessarily, but what I find is really helpful is to create an atmosphere where they start to feel part of the room, part of our relationship, so that when they're going into the experience, they're feeling really helped in lots of different ways. And so that's why I prefer in person. And there are lots of little subtle things that might be out of view of a camera, a laptop, or whatever, that I like to be able to have a view to. And also, if I haven't had to do this yet, but if someone is in distress and I've gone over consent to touch, I'm able to sit, they usually lie on my couch, and I can just hold their hand or put a hand on their shoulder. Like that proximity is also really helpful. Again, I haven't had to do it yet, but my sense of being available for that really gives me comfort. And then with some dear friends who are therapists, one of whom's here, happy class back. We're working on doing a group ketamine retreat, so that's coming up later in the fall. So, so pretty simple.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear from you, Denise, as well. What does it look like for you?
So I too do in person. I think there's something very important about the setting. And when you work with women, the women that I work with, giving them a space of care, right? So whether it's a simple covering you up with a blanket, when we finish, right, you can't eat before you do your ketamine, so they're always starving, right? So when people are coming down and when they're ready, I've already asked them, like, what do you like to drink? What do you like to eat? So like we do a little picnic, and to be able to serve someone their food, serve them a drink, going into it, finding out what they want, creating the setting that they want, right? We talk about this in a very clinical setting, but I'm always understanding that it's also very spiritual, right? And there's a very intuitive piece of this work that we do. So for me, like you, I like the I can see the subtleties. Are you rocking? Are you a little nervous? I can't get that over camera. So it's just, I think everybody has their thing, but for me, that's important. And for me to be able to care for you when you often have come from a place where you haven't been cared for, right? This gives you an experience, and that experience, holding your hand, covering you up with a blanket, helping you with whatever's coming up, that's healing, right? Sometimes that is where the healing is. It's just giving you that experience. So for me, it's very a personal thing to do it in person. And I've done a couple of groups, but still, again, very personal.
We've touched a little bit then about what that dosing session looks like. So ketamine-assisted psychotherapy in our model consists of preparation, dosing, and integration sessions. You're never having a dosing session without the preparation and the integration. That's a very key tenet of Journey Clinical and how we do things. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the preparation side. I'm going to talk about integration in a sec, but I'd love to hear from you, Kat, actually, about preparation, how you view that. I know that you're on the medical side, but you know how we think of Journey Clinical and why we think that's so important.
Absolutely, yeah, and part of my background, not just in healthcare, is also in psychedelic spaces and providing harm reduction in different settings, and so being able to kind of merge those two worlds for me, I've been able to come to Journey Clinical with that expertise and that experience to provide a really a safe and optimal experience for our patients, and so the preparation part is so important, right? Like you want to be able to create a plan of care with these clients and let them know that they are also part of that. You're empowering them to know that like they're part of creating the set and setting as well, right? And so preparation with a psychotherapist makes that even better, right? Like you guys have a special bond with them. You know them like on a different level than we do as a medical team too. And so we're there to develop protocols, but you guys are there with them to really prepare them for the journey that they're about to embark upon. And so it's not just, so yeah, we're talking about set and setting, and you can also add into that talking about expectations versus and intentions, right? And one of our awesome clinicians, his name is Kwasi, he has a great ism, and he's like, it's great to have like strong intentions but relaxed expectations. And that has been in my back pocket ever since he said it. and I'll, like really exploring that with your patients and what that means to them, because there are some patients who really think that okay, I'm going to engage in ketamine psychotherapy and everything's going to be great, but not everybody has the same experience. And you can also be the same person and have multiple ketamine experiences and them all be different. And so being prepared for that part is also really key in the preparation.
Thank you. And Posse has so many little tidbits like that.
It's
that
amazing.
I keep in my back pocket.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And so I want to move on to integration. We can talk a little bit more maybe in the Q&A about the practicalities of the dosing session. But I want to talk about the importance of integration. So Brian, how do you emphasize the importance of integration to your clients? So one way I was thinking of framing this is kind of, especially in communities where there is, more of a recreational relationship to psychedelics and it's available and culturally, part of that. If someone were to ask you, why should I do this with a therapist versus, I have access to this, why can I just do that work on my own? How would you respond to a patient or client that was coming with that point of view?
Well, everyone has a different idea about what this human project is. But from my perspective, all healing takes place in relationship. And that includes the primary relationship I have with myself, right? And so when it comes to something like this, I think that non-ordinary states of consciousness are portals. But when we come back from a journey, and there's a reason why we call it a journey, bringing back the questions, the struggles, and the gifts from that journey, I need to share it with somebody. That's part of the healing process. And of course, psychotherapeutically, there's a lot to say about that. So I would say that doing it by yourself could be very interesting, but that the deeper benefit is going to be in having a real partner who is caring for you and noticing things about yourself that, we all have blind sides. We can't know everything about ourselves. We need people to help us mirror and reflect and attune to us in ways that are nurturing, helpful, and bring insight. But the other piece of it that is really important, and that reflects my background in 32 years of mindfulness practice and my work in DBT, and that is deliberate practice. Right? A big part of what can change things is when we have an impact from a journey and it calls up something about ourselves that we start to notice more often, and then we change our relationship to that. I'll just tell a little personal story of my own journey and how I've used this, and then maybe it'll make sense and bring it to life. So I advise all therapists to be in therapy most of the time. And so I was seeing a Jungian therapist for quite a while. And my dear old dad, who's a wonderful Englishman, 91 years old, he's very healthy, but he's a little bonkers, as old Englishmen often are. And he uses a pendulum to answer all the questions of big decisions in his life, and he believes that the pendulum is accessing this dead Indian saint named Sai Baba. And so he wants me to make financial decisions with the pendulum, he wants to make health decisions with the pendulum. And so I'm open to all kinds of things, but when it comes to these kinds of things with my dad, I tend to close down. I get frustrated, I get irritated. We get into arguments about it. So I'm doing some Jungian psychotherapy, and we're talking about my frustrations around it. And as we're kind of bouncing around, like, what is going on for him? What's the function of that for him? And as I said, he's very healthy. He's not on any medication, but he's 91. He's looking down the barrel of not being here. And so it came to me that, oh wait, this is this really interesting way his unconscious mind is finding an elegant way to not have to listen to us, because he never listens to his family. He decides it's his way or the highway. This is a way to kind of outsource choices that also connect him to the afterworld. And he doesn't really fear death, that's what he says. And so as we were talking about this in therapy, it really stuck to my mind. I wrote it down, and then 4 days later I'm yelling at him again. I'm irritated with him again. And so the insight didn't have an impact, even though it was really profound. So then about, maybe a month later, some dear colleagues of mine helped me have the very first 5-MeO DMT experience. And in that place of coming out of this remarkable space, I remembered my dad. I remembered this beautiful way that he is offloading his responsibilities as he's preparing to not be here. And it just hit me. My whole body felt it. Every cell of my body recognized how beautiful it was. And I started to weep. And I have to change the way I'm relating to him. And so the deliberate practice part of this, right, the integration part of this, is that I practice in my meditation frequently, but especially when I know I'm going to talk to him and when I see him, I close my eyes and I call back that sensation of care that has permeated my whole body, much better than just an insight, an idea. And because of its impact, it gives me motivation to actually be patient, to listen, to shut up, hold it in my body, work with it myself so that I'm not engaging with him in a way that's damaging our relationship and I'll regret something. Right? So that's an example of deliberate practice that comes from the insights we can glean from our journeys, and then it's about getting to the work. And that's one of the things I always tell people, kind of what you were saying about expectations. You got to work this. There's nothing that's going to happen lastingly without work.
Thanks, Brian. And that's why the relationship with the therapist is so important. Thanks for giving your own example there. Appreciate that. And I'll pass it to Denise to talk about your work and just the outcomes that you've experienced from KAP. So any stories you can share of clients who've benefited from the treatment and how the experience has benefited your relationship with therapeutic work with them.
Yeah, so 2 things come to mind when I work with my clients on integration and why. So a couple of things come up for me. When I first got into this work, this is a second career for me, right? And so in this career, when I first started, I'd sit with women, they'd be rocking and shaking, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening, right? And I was trying to figure out, and we are willfully unprepared when we come out of school, really, for sitting with people. And so I was like, what's happening here? And what I realized very quickly was that we can do all this talking, but it's the body. And so this medicine gives me the opportunity to help women touch into their bodies in a way that they haven't been able to experience before, right? So when we talk about healing, I work with a lot of women who have lots of trauma. And so for me, when I think about depression and anxiety, I don't think about them independently. I say, where does it come from? And for me, anxiety and depression are just symptoms of trauma. I don't really know too many people who have depression who don't have some trauma somewhere, right, or anxiety. And what I've been able to see from my clients with really bad anxiety is for the first time there's space between them and their anxiety. For the first time, they're like, oh, I never knew what it was like to be without anxiety. Like literally, like in their bodies are feeling things so much differently, right? And so, and everybody's different, right? And I've had several journeys with my clients. But when they step back into the room and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know what it was like to be without my anxiety, or oh, I can see and I'm not depressed. Like, it's so amazing. And then they can come in and they can have a conversation that they could not have. And I mean, I've been working with clients, and the honest truth is like, I need something because I gotta have something because you're not getting anywhere. I can't get to anything, can't touch anything, right? And so when this came up, I was like, oh, let's check this out. And when you're working with women of color, they have a very intricate system of not touching things, right? We have armed ourselves because of the things that we've been through. And so again, ease and grace. So when you have some medicine that provides you with some ease and grace so that we can now have a conversation that you can't have when you are fully in your state, like and you've got your defense mechanisms up. So this allows your clients to tap into spaces that have been so painful, right? And then they can slip into this space. And so I think for me, that is what I'm seeing, and I'm like, oh, this is like whimsical and magical. Because for me, it's not just about what you're saying, but it's what you're feeling. And if you can't get your body on board and right, you don't get the change that you need. But now your body is calm, right? Your defense mechanisms are low, and now we can have conversations that we couldn't have before. And that, for me, is what's showing such profound difference. And that's why the change is happening. And I'm not saying all of them, but they're like doing their work and they're like, oh, I'm good. I've been trying to get them good for 5 years, and so like we can talk about things that we couldn't talk about before. So that's what I'm seeing, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of magical. And then I've had my own experience, and I was like, oh, wow. 13 years of therapy, 4 hours of a good trip. Somebody should have told me this a long time ago.
Thanks for sharing, Denise. That was really, really insightful. Thanks for going into all of that. I want to ask you, Brian, too. I know that you obviously have very experience in a mindfulness approach and lots of techniques around that. So I'd love to hear about your outcomes you've experienced and witnessed from KAP and how you use mindfulness techniques in that integration process.
Sure. Well, one of the things that came to mind actually, as you were talking, Kat, around that great little piece of wisdom in your pocket from about having intentions, but also managing expectations. Part of it is about we're all control freaks, and we need to be for lots of reasons. There's a lot of harm out there and a lot of navigation. So there are different ways to practice mindfulness as part of preparation that allows people to sort of dance in this middle space of letting things come up, but also being in the partition when it's not comfortable to be able to sit adjacent to something that's difficult, different memory, sensation of the body, and yet not push it away but not get lost in it, right? So finding that middle path is really helpful. And sometimes we have time to really work through that over weeks in preparation, sometimes it's not available. But one of the things I tell people as they're setting intentions is it's a little bit like jazz. We kind of know where we want to go with the music, but we got to listen to what actually happens and be on the fly with it and play and move with it so that you're not resisting or forcing or pushing. So there are different meditative practices that really bring that to life, that are really helpful. Then also, the way that I like to hold space, many people are really kind of just doing their thing. And a big way to work is just to get out of their way and let them do their thing. But also there needs to be, for me at least, an active space. And that means that I'm not checking my phone, and I'm not reading or daydreaming. I'm trying to focus on them, and there are different meditative practices that I do that kind of coat the room with my attention and my intention to give them their best service and their best care. And so there's that part that I practice that's happening while it's going on. And then, during the session, sometimes people really need a little extra guidance. And in the Vajrayana Buddhist system, there are lots of ways of using imagery as part of meditation. And so one of the cases that I can share that was really powerful was a woman who had a very difficult relationship with her mother. When she was in her mother's belly, what would be her older brother was killed in a car accident. And so mother was grieving while she was caring my client. And so when she remembers her childhood, it felt like a lot of times her mother wasn't present, wasn't available, and for sounding really good reasons. And so this woman who was now a professional and with 3 grown children, married, successful career, she had this fundamental schema of feeling like no one really cares for her, people always disappoint her, people leave her emotionally. And so she had done a lot of spiritual work, a lot of therapy, and she came to do KAP to try and understand this. And so in her first session, she wanted to do a lot of processing. She didn't want to lie down. She was sitting up, and she had her eyes closed, and she was just talking. And a very pleasant, big Cheshire cat smile on her face. And she said, I want to go visit my mom. And so I kind of guided her in a visualization. But my intuition was to go back and she had told me about her mom had suffered a lot of trauma in her country, from war and revolution. And so we went back to her mother's bedside when she was a little girl. And I said, could you go in as a grown woman, seeing your mother as a little girl, and bring all the love you have for your children and pour it into your mother? Just pour it in. And what would that look like? And she sat her on her lap and she cradled her and she rocked her own mother in her lap. And then I had her time travel back to when she herself was around 8 years old. And I had her mother come in and put her on her lap and then give it back to her. And so this kind of exchange of care was a powerful visualization for her, and it really moved the needle for her. She really was able to come back and practice feeling for her mother, recognizing the love that she did get, recognizing the patterns of thinking that tend to isolate herself from people. And it really was a powerful, powerful experience.
Thank you. Sounds like it gave you a lot to work with.
Yeah.
Can I get a quick time check from anybody?
8:38.
8:30? Okay. 8:38? Okay. Great. Well, we have a lot of ground we can cover, but I also want to wrap this up and get to networking as well and connecting. I encourage you to make connections. We're all about that here. If you, want to host a retreat or something like that, we have a ratio of therapists to clients that you work with. So one great thing about connecting with communities, you find people to partner in, and if you want to host a retreat, just a good experience. So it's just one piece of many that of reasons why building out your relationships can really help you grow your practice and do this work. Which I know, Brian, you have a great background and ability to market consistently, so we've had some conversations about that and talking about the professional network. So great person to ask if you have any marketing questions is Brian. And I want to ask you about your advice for the many people here who are maybe interested in offering ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. So I'm going to ask you, Denise, what you have to say to those people who are considering doing this work.
Just do it. So for me, it was a slow go, right? I first started asking questions about 3 years ago, but it just wasn't that gelled. I reached out to camp and they were like, oh, I don't know, and so that didn't make me feel comfortable. So there was just a lot of things. However, for me, I did a couple things that helped me to move the needle. The first thing was, I was fortunate enough that I also trained through MAPS for MDMA. So that was the first introduction for me. And they were talking about KAP, and so that was legal, and I was like, so I'm gonna do it. I had already talked to Journey Clinical prior to that. Then I went back and I was like, okay, maybe this is good. And to be quite honest, I looked at the Fluence training, it was really expensive. It was cheaper for me to sign up for KAP. Just being honest, right? It was just cheaper to sign up for Journey and do training. And get all that same training a lot cheaper. And Fluence has a really good, reputation for their training. So that was very helpful. The other thing that was helpful is I had met a doctor, and so I was a little worried about just sitting with people. I was like, oh. So anyway, so relationships and networking, right? So she was like, I will work with you so that, you feel comfortable. So networking is really important, making partnerships. I'm gonna say this is to me really important, and I think on many levels, right? So no matter what ethnic background, is that as a person of color, I couldn't find a person of color to sit with. That was really hard, but it was super important for me. Super important for me. And I had to look high and low, really high and low to find someone, but I did. And so that was the next thing. So it was networking. The second thing was finding someone so that I could do the journey, because I don't believe in doing for people what I haven't done for myself. So that was the second big piece, was, doing the work myself. And the third piece really was to just like let it go. There's no perfection, it's not perfect. Start with the clients you already have. And I have a very easy relationship with a lot of my clients, so like a lot of them already knew, like I was like, okay, so I'm working on this training and I'm doing this. And so my younger clients was like, sign me up, I'm ready to go. So I started really with the clients that I already had a good history with, right? So I didn't have to worry about, so to speak, like figuring that piece out. So I just started with right where I was with the people. So networking, doing your own work so that you have the experience for yourself, and then just jumping in with the clients that you already have. And you're a beginner, so if you can offer some discounts, because that's really where I started. Like I reduced some fees and was like, okay, let's go, let's give this a shot, right? And that's where I started, and right there within my roles of clients, that's right there. And I was able to do all my work.
That's great. And for your own practice, what do you want to touch briefly on, the groups that you're working on, or what your goals are in your practice for the next?
Yeah, so I've sat in a couple of groups, and again, find what you need. I did my own, basically I just created some internships. I did my first time that I did ketamine was with a group, and I was like, hey, can I sit with you guys, and can I, just help you out? And they were like, absolutely. I was like, so that gave me another opportunity. Group work is important to me because for me in community, I know that there's where the healing is. And you were talking like there's so much healing in the witnessing, right? So when these people have these experiences come up, that witnessing part for me is really important, and the curiosity. So creating community and creating groups. So when I did my first group, those women are still kind of connecting with each other, right? Because they had that experience, and it's like no other, right? To have that experience. My ultimate goal is to be able to take women out of the country or to other places, because what I find is women are extremely busy, they're doing 1,000 things, and so they gotta play hard and work hard. So like, let's go away, let's just work really hard to do this healing, and then you can come back and go back to your life, and then we get back together. But it sounds crazy, but a lot of people don't have 10 years. They think they don't have 10 years, then they won't leave. But giving them the space, right, to take them away from the phones, the family, and all of those things, it's just really important. So just things to think about.
What about you, Brian? What are your goals in your practice? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, I think doing retreats is definitely on my list too. There is something about the pilgrimage and the creating community and the container that kind of goes on a journey and comes back, and that the integration is communal. So all that's really powerful. That's how I've done all my indigenous work, and it's been life-changing. So I want to do that with ketamine. And I'm thinking about starting a group practice next year and have interns and train people and have more of this as a specialty.
I know you're already educating those people and young people who training as well, so that's great. And I want to ask you, Kat, briefly just on your side of that experience of the retreats and groups for Journey Campus Contracting. You just mentioned how we can support all these different types of modalities, including dosing for groups.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always developing our protocols and letting them evolve with not only the most current research for evidence-based practices, but also in partnering with you guys as the psychotherapists and the therapeutic goals that you have in mind for your specific groups and retreat settings and things like that, whatever modality you have. We are building like a whatever medical team that is there specifically for you guys to help you design these retreat settings or group settings in a really safe way. And so actually we mentioned Kwasi already, and Kwasi is going to be heading that, like spearheading that, and he's such a wonderful source, and so many of our medical clinicians on our team have so many different, like they wear so many different hats. They're not just in healthcare, right? They have so many different experiences that help you guys create the therapy, the therapy experiences that you want to have for your clients. So.
Thank you. Yeah. And obviously groups are one, retreats are one way to expand access to more people. So that's really important. And yeah, I am so grateful to all of you for sharing all these pieces, and I know they'll be around, and a lot of Journey Clinical members are among us, so if you have the kind of branded name tag, that's likely to mean that you're a member. And so that's a great, if you're here to learn, it's great to connect with those members and learn about how they're building KAP into their practice and ask questions. We probably will move away in sort of a Q&A, come and find us, and we're going to be following up, and I can put you in touch with anyone from our team who'd be really excited to talk to you more about that. And go ahead, Denise.
So just and really quick, I know a lot of people are looking to actually experience KAP, so there's like, you need a therapist to do that. So I will, sit with folks sometimes. So if that's something that you feel like you need, look me up.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely, and that's a big part of these connections, opportunities to connect. And go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I offer the same thing, so anyone who's interested in that.
Yeah, it's really important, and as you say, it's important to experience the work and then offer it as well.
Yes.
So I have a little bit of a list of things I just want to run over. So first and foremost, thank you so much, all of you, for sharing.